Hi there, my name is Jennifer Wolf, and I am the coordinator for career counseling in the Office of Career Services. And so today you're probably tuning into this tutorial just to get a little bit more of an idea of how the Focus 2 career planning assessment can help you, and maybe walk through a few of the resources that are contained in that assessment just so you get more of an idea. Um, you probably heard about the Focus 2 assessment. You've either been a student who maybe came into our office for an individual career counseling appointment, or more likely you might have heard about it in maybe your UI 100 class as an assignment that you have for that course. So first things first, a couple ways that you'll actually be able to get to the Focus 2 assessment are, I'm on our website right now, the Career Services main page, and so you can get to it from here. You go to cmo.edu/careers, and if you scroll down into our career resources section, so the need help choosing a major, if you click in there, you'll get a list of sort of tabs across the top, and under the assessment tools information, you'll see a variety of different assessments that we actually do offer. All of these are free for you, but the biggest one, you have the hyperlink here. You can click directly into the focus assessment from here, and it does give you those login instructions above. And so basically, you need to be a Southeast student. This is an assessment that we pay for through the office, and so there is a subscription in a certain way that you'd need to go into it. And so you can either access it here on our career services page, or more likely if you're in your UI 100 class, you're going to get that URL through your UI 100 textbook, or the professor might share that information on Moodle. But if you ever have any questions, you can always just contact our office and get the information as well. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to log in. And so all I'll need to do is click that hyperlink. And if you're a first-time user, you're going to go through the registration process. But since I'm already in, we're just going to do that. And let me just plug my info in here really fast. And I'm going to access, I have administrative rights for the system too, but I'm going to show us the student side and what you would see when you log in. Okay, so here's sort of the dashboard or the home page for the Focus 2. And the first sort of three circles up here at the top, a series of questions that involve your level of career planning involvement. And so it's going to ask you things like if you've ever taken a career assessment before, or if, you know, how much you might know about different careers or occupations. So I'm going to show you the results of mine. And so obviously I'm pretty prepared in most of these areas. I've thought about these things quite a bit. Don't worry about what your scores are. We see a lot of lower scores just because if you're taking the career assessment, chances are you are involved in that aspects of self-assessment, learning more about who you are, learning more about careers and occupations that exist, and then also how you would get to those certain careers, okay? The second one here, this My Academic Strengths, it's pretty much a checklist of any sort of academic subject areas that sort of the big hitters, things like English or sciences. And so you can sort of scale yourself on there. Here again, it's not necessarily anything that's going to affect your results on the assessment itself, but just more of a checklist for you to kind of key into what are the things that you do well in, and then also what are those things that you might either want to learn more about or things that you might want to stay away from or you feel like you don't do well in. And then finally, this is a newer section for the Focus, this Am I Career Ready section. And the results that you would get with this have to do with all of these different skill sets that are listed here are skills that employers identify as transferable skills no matter what major. They want to see things like professionalism, maybe your ability to communicate verbally and in writing, your ability to work in a team, things like that. And so these are sort of 8 key skills that employers have been surveyed on, not just from our office, but across the country. And they've been plugged into this. And so it gives you a way to sort of self-assess there, just to see which areas you might want to look at developing more, both in the classroom, but also taking advantage of those opportunities outside of the classroom. So I'm going to go back to the home button, which is kind of over here in the far left at the top of the screen. If you just click that, it takes you back to your dashboard. And so Under the self-assessment section, you'll see 5 different mini assessments. And so obviously I've taken these already, and so that's why you're seeing 100% complete. I don't necessarily want to get in and start this over, but I'm going to pick this work interest assessment as just one of the examples and kind of highlight what you see when you get into the results. And so this is based off of the answers that I provided, and it's giving me what we call the work interest Holland code. You'll see this little circle here, SAI. And so that stands for the social, the artistic, and the investigative categories. So it gives you an idea here of a description of each one of these, but all 6 of these categories will be on anybody's assessment. And it just sort of ranks based off of your answers that you gave, which scales rank higher than others. And so you'll see that, you know, the highest I have is the social category, followed by that artistic, and then finally that investigative to make up the top 3. And then the realistic, more of that hands-on sort of liking to be maybe working with things or working with, you know, fixing things and things of that nature, maybe being outside. Enterprising, which is the influencing category, liking to do things like selling and promotion, for example, or persuading people for an idea. And then finally, the conventional or the organizational category. So this is a category where it's marked by like routine work, very systematic way of doing things. And everybody's going to have a combination of these on their assessment. It's not like there's a right or a wrong. It's just kind of what it is, what sort of makes up who you are. But I would definitely say that conventional, while I'm an organized person in my personal life and in my leisure time, I don't particularly like to work with, you know, large data sets, for example, or do a lot of number crunching and things like that. So that's just an example of maybe kind of reading between the lines on these results. So then if you hit the continue button, you'll come up with a whole bunch of occupational titles based off of your results that match, in my case, the SAI category. And so with each one of these, you can actually click in and you can read more about that particular job, okay? So it gives you that brief overview, kind of explains typical job tasks, shows you how your profile compares to somebody who took this, who in this case was a foreign language professor. And then finally sort of breaks down skills, values, the different conditions you might be faced with if you were in a work environment. So things like, you know, how much email you might be sending, or you have to get up and speak in front of a group lots of times, you know, things like that. And then what a lot of people want to know is obviously types of majors that you might take that would lead to this ultimately, or also outlook and earnings potential. And so all of these different categories are in every single result that comes up. And so it's a good way for you to get a nice snapshot of a lot of different occupations, no matter what area or what might come up on your work interest assessment. The other thing I want to show you within the assessment, sorry, I got to go back here, is the filtering feature. And so right now, when you come up with occupations that come down here, you're going to see education levels that are a 2-year degree, a bachelor's degree, or an advanced degree. This is geared towards occupations that would need at least a 2-year degree. You're not going to see a lot of things that might only require a high school diploma on the Focus 2 assessment. It's designed for students that are in college. But if you wanted to say click off of you're getting a 4-year degree and maybe you want to stop at a 4-year degree, you know, you don't want to go on to a master's program, for example. You might only want to look at the ones that come up with a bachelor's degree. Or you can also sort by the maybe job family, or if you want to look at things that are considered sort of sustainability jobs or green jobs, you know, things that might have a lot more electronic or technology based to them rather than using, you know, sort of a paper format. Bright Outlook are jobs that are going to have a lot of growth. There's projections to have a lot of growth in those fields over the next, say, 10, 15 years. And then also, if you do save positions anywhere, it'll show those saved occupations as well. So one way I kind of like to look at this actually is under the job family. So if you update this, it's going to show you the positions in groupings. And so like substance abuse counselor, more mental health, psychology-based stuff. But then I have a lot more teaching stuff in here under the education and training, because a lot of these positions, like I said, I've also got it where we're only looking at things with a bachelor's degree. If I wanted to look at everything and look at the job family, just update that. That gives me all my returns back. Okay. So that's just a really quick way of kind of going over the different ways you can look at each one of those assessments. And so every single one of them is structured the same way in terms of how you can filter. Personality, values, and skills will have a lot more on there just because there's a lot more that will be captured with those three different assessments. But if you wanted to look at what hits on all of them, you can also combine the assessments. And so in this feature, if you click here, it gives you the ability to play around with, okay, which ones are on all 5, for example. And you'll see here that even for myself, I don't have occupations that come up in all 5 or all 4 for that matter. And so if you just click the little plus button, it gives me the things that come up in at least 3 of those assessments. And it shows me which ones it's coming from. So this can be kind of helpful to sort of combine everything together and see what might be those top picks from the 5 different assessments rather than having to go through each one of them separately. Okay. Now you're going to find things on here that are probably not things that you want to do. Here again, it's not necessarily assessing, those questions aren't putting into consideration abilities, or we're looking at this, the assessment looks more at interest areas. And so, you know, a good example is kind of this, you know, foreign language professor for me. Yeah, it's on there and I know why it's on there, because it's, you know, to be a foreign language professor, you have to be social. You'd have to want to, you know, be fairly creative in the classroom, and maybe investigating and do research on languages and linguistics and things like that. But I know that I would not be very good at being a foreign language professor because, for example, I didn't really have a very good time in my foreign language classes. I struggled with those. And so interest versus ability, right? I love languages, I love culture, for example, but it's not something that I would want to do professionally. So you just kind of have to keep that in mind with the assessment and kind of understanding some of those limitations. So if we go back to the home screen, kind of looked at real briefly how you can go through the self-assessment feature. But another area that's really kind of nice is that all of this explore the possibilities sections, all these little blue tabs, really help you to break down all of the content that's outside of your own assessment, all of the different majors or occupations that might be surveyed in this particular assessment with Focus 2. So for example, we do have some majors that are coded, shows you what you can do and breaks down accounting, for example, what might be offered and the different jobs that you could get to if you were to say major in accounting. Now, I will say that with this, what can I do with a major at SEMO, there is some limitation. Most of these are offered in some way, but there are going to be a lot more that are titled on here versus what we have at Southeast, just because of the way that the focus assessment makes us put them in. And so they have the certain words and certain titles, for example, to the majors. You know, we have agricultural education, for example. We don't have a specific major in agriculture production operations, but our agribusiness programs would be a part of that, if that makes sense. And so rather than limiting it too much, we want to make sure that students get an idea of what are all those different combinations and what that might look like, not only at Southeast, but if you talk to students at different universities and things, you may be majoring in the same thing. It just may be called something slightly different depending upon what school you're going to, okay? So the other thing we can do with this is, if we go back, we'll get down here again. I'm not going to go into all of these, but another one that is really kind of fun to play around with is the compare 2 occupations side by side. So if you click here, you get a list of all of the different occupational titles that are surveyed in the Focus 2, which are right around 1,000 different occupations. There's quite a few on here. But say you've never heard of something before and you want to know more about it. I don't know, maybe you don't know what an educator is. And then maybe we want to look at, I don't know, that sounds kind of like a lawyer, so maybe we want to look at something having to do with law. And so I'm going to just pull up law clerks here, for example. So what it's going to do is we've got our 2 occupations, and if we just hit continue, it's going to give us an overview and break down these 2 occupations sort of side by side. And so talk about the different majors that you could look at, focus areas of study, talk about the different job duties, compare both of these, and then breaks down every single area side by side. And one of the really neat things about this particular feature on Focus is that it shows your profile next to, well, in this case, the educator and the law clerk. And so you can see for me, for example, probably wouldn't necessarily really like being either one of these just because my skills are pretty different. You know, for example, both of these are highly conventional, highly enterprising, and I'm not so much. So, you know, just being aware that yes, that doesn't mean that you have to have an exact match by any means, but that you want to try to see somewhat of a similarity between how those scales rank up between you and somebody who, you know, is in this position that took this assessment. And then, you know, just breaks down everything and even gives you some professional associations that you might actually, if you really want to know more, going out to these external resources and seeing and reading up on those things and doing your research there. Okay, so that's a few of the really quick ways about how you can get in and explore not only your own results through the self-assessment feature, but also exploring all of those different possibilities and all those different job titles that are surveyed on the Focus 2 outside of what might come up on your own assessment results. And then finally, with the very bottom, so if you do have the ability to save both occupations as well as majors. If you wanted to, you know, get back into the Focus and do more research on things and you don't want to have to look things up each time, you can save occupations and majors that way. You can also review and print a portfolio, and so this gives you the ability to print all of this stuff out. I probably wouldn't, you know, say open up the personality assessment or the values assessment and then print, just because there's going to be a lot more occupations listed on there, and so it'll be multiple pages. But it's also a way for you to save that information outside of just the Focus 2 assessment. Okay, I think that just about covers it. If you do have any questions about the Focus, or if you want to learn more about how to take this, or if you want, you know, you've taken it already and you want to dig in more to your results, please let the Office of Career Services know. You can get a hold of us by our email address, which is careerservices@cmo.edu, or you can contact us via phone or stop into Academic Hall 057. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in.